Tania and Nette. This is series 2, podcast 2, the realignment. Sorry, my dog has decided that he wants to be part of the podcast.
I barely heard anything. There was just a little like, "Arr."
How are you, Tania?
I'm getting better. How are you? How's Andy? Is his COVID cleared up?
Yeah, he's pretty good. He had 2 days of being sick and then he isolated at his shed for the rest of the time because he was well, but I was keeping him quarantined. So thank you for asking, but he's doing really well. So back to normal in the McCoubry household. So
good. And how are you?
Yeah, pretty good. My biggest thing that I find is everyone knows we're on series 2, so this is podcast 1. And those who listened to our last series, our last podcast 1 of this one, Spirit came in half an hour before our podcast, and I got a huge download of information. And physically, that actually takes a toll on my body. I don't understand the science of how it works, but the download comes in what I would say sort of 10 weeks of writing, or weeks and weeks of writing, if I was to actually put it out, which I'm trying to do. But it comes in half an hour. So your human brain can't keep up with dialogue at that speed. But for some reason, it's like almost putting a tank of water into a small cup, and somehow it fits. And somehow I can obtain that information when I recall it. And so when I say a word, like it sort of comes in headings almost. And when I say the word mother, then all of this information will be remembered for mother. Or the graphs in particular, I sat at a computer and literally the graphs, I could type the graphs and they would come up into the spreadsheet to do the graph the way that they did. So yeah, a bit of a toll on my body actually. Achy elbows, achy shoulders, almost like inflammatory sort of symptoms, I would say. Yeah, thankfully not headaches, because that would drive me nuts. But that's what I would have thought I would got. But instead I've just got a physical, tiredness. Yeah.
I was always taught when it came to downloads and stuff like that to make sure that the energy, how like our aura and all of that, to make sure that there's a separation between personal energy and spirit energy. So when the energy combines, make sure it combines with spirit energy and not human energy. I don't know if that helps you, but they're prompting me to say it to you. So I personally, I don't get those effects. I also have not received a significant download like you did, but I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, I find that the smaller ones I don't get affected, but these big ones, and this is the biggest I've ever had. A week earlier, or just over a week earlier, I got a graph and some information, which I thought was a big download, and I had physical sort of issues with it. But and I started to get that down, and I think that we spoke about on our last podcast of the last series. And then a few days later, I got just a graph, which this all related to. So they gave it to me in pieces, which was good, because I now know I wouldn't have been able to physically do it. I think it's just a side effect of that amount of data, and I have worked on it with Nancy Rebecca when I was there. I used to say to her, how does everyone else cope with this? There was a whole bunch of psychics that work in the industry, and it's not that usual to get that amount of download. So she was just sort of saying, your body's just going to take it, try to ground as much as you can and try and release energy. So I keep doing that every day, and just trying to go for long walks and stuff like that get my physical body, walk in the ocean water, and I'll keep that up. But I
hydrate and all those fun things.
And it doesn't help that it's the middle of summer, so it's super hot here too, so, and muggy, or humid, sorry. So but what about you? How's it going? Last series we spoke about you with your breakup. And I know we've had a few listeners message in, and one of them messaged me in particular about how much they love your vulnerability within that, and was asking how you were going. So it's lovely to know that the listeners are asking that, and also that they related to you, and that they were relating to this new softer side they could see for you and saw themselves within it. So yeah.
Well, for starters, I'm very soft, and I've always been very soft. I just don't typically lead with it, but Spirit's been really encouraging me to do that. And this experience, like I said, it was kind of like my armor's been taken off and I just can't even find it anymore. But it's not just that I can't find it, it's that I don't want to. Because I'm actually finding the way that I'm processing all of this with an open heart, and I remember your message being about kindness, with an open heart and with kindness, I'm finding it's moving through me a lot faster. Whereas if I was being shut down and not having that open heart, I think that this would be a lot more painful. And not to say it hasn't been painful. I mean, I've had my fair share of tears, but so far there's no contact. And that's providing me sort of the opportunity to just really go, through the motions, and I'm not crying as much, which is wonderful, but I'm feeling stronger, but I'm also not feeling super headstrong, and I'm not quite sure how else to explain them. Like, I'm usually a very action oriented person, I'm doing gardening, or I'm cleaning the yard, or I'm project oriented. I'm doing all of these different things. And for the past little while, like I just said to my friend, I'm like, I can't even bring myself to do these things, like these sort of project oriented things. Like I just can't, like, I just don't have the drive.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the new soft me or what, but yeah, I just don't have the drive. I'm gonna have to get the drive. There's things that need to be done.
When the lawn is around your neck, you'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, even my girlfriend said to me today, she's like, you're doing pretty damn good with this. Like, you're going through a lot. There's a lot happening, and she's like, you're doing really well. And I was like, thanks. Don't totally feel like I am. I'm still hurting, but it's a different, I don't really know how to explain it. It's just a different type of processing of it, because it's in a loving way towards myself.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, maybe that you're listening to your body in the right way. Like, that project orientation will come back. It's just, I think your body just needs to heal, and it needs time to do that. And sometimes that type of work isn't what's going to heal it. But although they'll get to a stage where you go, okay, now I need to do it.
Yeah.
And
I've been really tired. And the relationship and where things had gotten to was exhausting. It was exhausting. And I don't think I realized how exhausting it was until it wasn't there anymore. And then I could just and just recharge, which is interesting, because that's what that one message said, was to sit back and recharge. So it's been nice. It's been a nice sort of time to recalibrate. What I did want to say about the new series is that after the last podcast, Spirit came in and said the reason that they're doing series is because they're trying to teach in each series different levels of healing and learning. So somebody might resonate well with series 1, somebody else might resonate well with series 2, and vice versa. But if you think back, we've gone different levels explaining all of these things as the podcasts have progressed. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can even look back on some of the podcasts, because I had a few little like bitches, like rants, where, and I assure you these things still irritate me, but it's funny, it's just coming up in me in a different way.
Yeah. And I too find that I can see over that short time, and a lot of it is because of the discussion in the podcast and the interaction with spirit, that I've grown and my knowledge has grown so much within that time as well. And some of it was not that I didn't know it already, it was just that it had been pushed to the side.
Yes.
And it was almost like, yeah, it's being, you know, reborn into the conversation and into the thing, and with new bits of knowledge that you've brought in for me or that we've got through spirit, it's like putting pieces of the puzzle together. So I think both of us are at another level of discussion in many ways as well, and this download was a good way to start that off again, according to spirit. So
and then they started giving me some information to kind of break down a little bit more what you talked about in the last episode. So do you want to start? Because I guarantee that they're going to align in some way.
Yeah.
So do you want to get started and then I can come in, or what would you like?
Yeah, we can do that if you want. I've started typing this down, so I'm up to page 6 or 7. I'm not quite sure, but there's one of the things that I wanted to really stress when I was doing, or they were stressing as they were coming up, was that this is actually 3 downloads. So the first download was about the balance of our own intuition within a personal sort of level. And it was by age group, and it was sort of helping us align. So we will talk about how at each age group, at each sort of age role, like mothering or parenting, grandparenting, as a toddler, as a teenager, all those different things where we need to be to align, and where we can end up in the wrong bracket. Then they sent me a message about, which was just a graph about the years, and I found it quite interesting because I didn't really know how this fit in with anything. But then the big download sort of and it showed me obviously from the 1800s all the way, and I re-looked at the graph again, sat in that to get some information that was coming through, and it goes to about 2080, so 2080 on there, and we still aren't fully realigned back to then, but we're at a very good level. And one of the things when I was looking at that was very much what you just spoke about just before, was about we are emerging and opening up some of our areas and not putting those guards up, because those guards are actually what has shut down our intuition in some ways, and our interaction with people. And so that they use the word armor and said that people will be letting their armor down and not wanting to reclaim their armor or find their armor. So that's really interesting that came up within your earlier chat, that you're like, I actually don't really want to find that anymore. Like, I'm happy with who I am. And I wonder as a collective if that's part of where it's going. The people who are actually more already aligned intuitively, like you are, to be able to get that amount of information that you've had since that, or since the birth of your son, which was ages ago, and you were intuitive anyway before then, you will already be so far up that chart that it doesn't relate to you in such a way, but it does in those smaller ways. So even those who are very aligned already and very back to the baseline are still going to find a growth. So that's kind of cool too. It's not like everyone's going to catch up to everyone. It's like everyone's going to, in their own alignment, sort of fall where they are. So
yeah, because we're all still having the human experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the lines that they write, when I was writing it out, that I remembered very clearly, and they were quite adamant that I got the wording right. I should actually probably pull it up in front of me, but I'm going to try and run with it beforehand, was that they said we have many years to become telepathic, to become mind readers in that way, to see spirits, to see all those sort of things when we leave our bodies at the end of our life. And that one of the big focuses that they're trying to keep pushing on is the balance of your physical and your intuitive. So they don't want us to try and become massively intuitives and no physical connection. That's not where they're going. So they don't want us all seeing spirits, and they don't want us all not verbalizing anymore. We're getting everything through telepathic channels. They're sort of making sure we understand that this realignment is actually a physical realignment just as much as it is intuitive realignment. And that's the message that they're saying is being falsified in some ways. You know, they're not this whole this change, this awakening that they were talking about is an awakening of physical and intuitive. It's an awakening of both. It's a reusing our physical for the right and reusing our intuitive for the right balance, I suppose. Yeah, and then obviously the third one was all that information that came through. So they were saying that I needed to make sure that listeners understood that there is 3 parts to this, and that 3 parts are the holistic one. So ourselves, us as humans, actually where we sit in that little thing ourselves, and then where we sit as a majority. So, yeah. I can keep going, but I'm quite happy for you to interrupt if you've got something to say.
It's not quite totally relating, but they just kind of, I was typing it out on my phone as it was coming through, but basically the first point that they wanted to talk about was community. And they said there's a high level of individualism that is being observed and wish to share that has never been the point. This individualism.
Say that again.
Individualism, there is a high level of individualism. People doing things on their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's never been the point. That's never been what they want. They said humans are connecting more with their phones and televisions and not people in the same room, which you talked about. They're shutting down, people are shutting down and experiencing mental health at a rate that Spirit finds concerning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they did say that they wanted to refer to this as toxic individualism.
Okay.
They said aloneness is imperative for introspection and quiet. However, the basis of growth is not done individually. It is done as a collective, as shared by Nette, being in community. It's where our souls and intuition, as you call it, are able to connect and feed energy amongst each other. This is both done on an energetic level, an intellectual level, and a physical level. Touch, it's repeating a bit what you were saying, but it's just saying it a little bit different. Touch is of utmost importance in order for what they're calling energetic transference to occur. Yeah. Energetic transference, they defined it as is the movement of love physically from one body to another in the event someone is more in their physical and not their intuitive. So touch could balance somebody more into their physical if required, or balance somebody more into their spiritual if required. This is a way to bring the vibration back to opening the intuitive, which is being with like-minded people. And by this, people with common values and common goals will bring peace to the suffering souls. They come back to suffering souls. This is how collectively one holds the energy and allows the other to rise to it. This connection and toxic individualism stops this process, hence community. So the way they explained energy transference is if you and I say I'm freezing cold and you're warm and I cuddle up to you, the warmth of your body is going to warm my body. And it takes nothing away from the warmer person in order for you to warm me up. So I'm cold, you're warm, we cuddle together, and it raises my warmth to your body temperature. So they're saying that's akin to holding a higher vibration. So you don't get cold in the bed with me to match my cold. You hold the warmth to have me rise to the warmth.
Yeah. It's interesting you talked about the loneliness there earlier too, and the touch, because that was a big area of touch that they talked about for sure. And that importance of that exchange of energy that you're talking about is what we don't do. And in particular in Western society, we're very bad at touch. We spoke about that last week. And as you were talking then, you know, I know that loneliness is a heading within that chapter. And one of the cures for loneliness is touch. So, and the other one is discussion. So is listening, you know, and most people want to be heard, and they don't need answers necessarily. And so sometimes just that gentle hand or that gentle touch and that ear of listening is a
But
cure
that alone is
loneliness.
an energetic exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is what we're trying to do. It's the energetic balance that we're trying to actually get back. And these are little tools that can help. You know, some of these things that you're talking about are how can we actually get ourselves realigned?
Exactly.
We can touch, we can talk, we can listen.
And that's what I'd ask them for, is like, okay, how do we break this down? How do we make this instead of sort of talking, oh, we're awakening and we're doing these things, like how are we actually doing it in the physical? So then they said a bad level of energetic transference is the colder person gets warmed by the warm person and then walks away.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't, because how they show it is if the colder person doesn't stay cuddling with the warmer person, once they've warmed up, it can take warmth from the warmer person, because then when they're on the same vibration, their energy balances each other out. So then it just speaks about having boundaries and ensuring that, because if I come cuddle up to you and I'm cold all the time and I do it 8 times in a row and I walk away every time, eventually it's going to wear you down and you're going to become exhausted and cold. You know, you're not going to be able to hold that warmth anymore. And then it spoke to what they mean by holding the energy, and what they're saying is that you have to hold it. You have to remain balanced in your own energy in order for people to rise to it. So again, it's that you can't lower to the cold person. You need to stay holding your warmth in order for people to rise to it. And it says, they said they are the ones that need to have the mercy of the room to have them rise to it. And I was like, mercy of the room? I don't even understand what that means. So I Googled mercy, and it means to have compassion for someone in distress when you have the ability to harm or punish them, but still hold your space. That's what they added, was, but still hold your space. So it's holding that energetic level, having compassion and love for somebody that's not there, when you could look down upon them and be like, oh, you know, you're this or you're that, but you're just holding it there. That's the way they explained it.
Without judgment. Yeah,
exactly. But that doesn't mean that we have to be friends with them or in relationship with them. And then they clarified, when I say suffering souls, I mean souls that are not having balance between their physical and their intuitive. And they refer to that as, just as I was sitting down for the podcast, that can also relate to heaven or hell. So heaven being when you're balanced and living authentically and with on your soul's path, and hell being when you're not balanced in that, and you're suffering all of these, you know, sort of emotional issues really as a result. And then, do you want me to go on? I'm just about done, actually.
No, go.
So I love that they're actually starting to give me the message of the physical and intuitive, because that's actually the language that they were using with me. And then I asked, they said plant medicine will become of utmost importance. It said a dandelion provides to some an ugly spot in their yard. To us, a dandelion is high in vitamins and minerals. And then they talked about specific ways to actually boil dandelions, boil the heads and the leaves. And it said for a strong dose of antioxidants and vitamin C. But they also said be very careful about sprays and pesticides. So it said at each time throughout the cycle on Earth that these plants, flowers, and herbs naturally bloom is in the time in which your body requires it.
Yes.
So as the dandelions are coming up here, that's when my body requires that plant medicine. When, say, lilacs, or I don't know if you can eat a lilac, but anyway, I'm just throwing it out there. When lilacs
edible
bloom,
flowers.
that's when we need that particular plant and the medicinal properties of it. And then it said, they bloom year round, although the sun is healing and warmth is soothing. More of these vitamins and minerals are required in order to thrive. So what they're saying is that in climates where it's warm all year round, it was interesting because it wasn't terribly clear to me, but basically they were saying that although there's a whole lot that you get from the sun, there's also a leaching from the sun that can take lower vitamins and minerals in your body. So that's why the plant medicine is so important to, as it blooms, to, and they didn't show me any other way of taking it really, other than boiling it in a tea type thing. And then they said in climates where there's winter, birch bark, pine, and nettle provide sustenance to endure coldness. So when I actually looked up what these different herbs and stuff did, it was a lot of antioxidants, a lot of anti-inflammatory, and a lot for colds and flus.
Ah, that's interesting because my craving at the moment is ginger, turmeric, and paprika, which are all work as anti-inflammatories as well. And it's interesting because my body's being that,
feeling inflamed,
feeling it.
Yeah.
And my instincts, like Will and Andy are like, are we eating turmeric and everything? I'm like, apparently.
Yes, honey, we are.
Yeah. And I want a turmeric thing. But it's exactly along those lines of, if you listen to your intuitive diet, you will crave those things and those herbal things. And even if you don't know why, you kind of like start going, I really feel like carrots, and you're eating carrot and hummus all week. Yeah.
Exactly.
My son was always that way. Like he would ask seasonally for food, and he would know almost exactly what was going to come on the fruit shop seasonally, and just intuitively.
That's exactly what they're saying is in your area, the food and the herbs and stuff that grow naturally in your area are the foods that you require in your body for the vitamins and minerals for that particular climate and environment that you're living in.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that we're getting oranges shipped from somewhere else, that we can't eat the oranges. That's certainly not what they're saying, but they're talking about this. They're saying symbiosis with nature and our own bodies, that becoming more intuitive to that. And then they talked about cedar bark, like bark from a cedar tree, that it helps with sleep and anxiety reduction. Now, I looked up cedar and I'm not getting that it helps with sleep and anxiety, but that's what they're telling me. Then they also, this is my very last part, they talked about non-conforming, because I don't know if that's a word that we used in the last podcast, but I think it was kind of like not conforming to societal norms.
Yeah.
But what they're saying is that non-conforming is to not live within expectations of being well put together. It's about me being more authentically who we are, basically our messy selves. So it's not necessarily like non-conformity. Oh, okay, well, that means that I'm not going to conform with the government, and I'm not going to conform with, the rules of the land, and I'm not going to conform with religion. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying, don't conform to like, for example, what they're bringing to me is sometimes at work, like it's awful and horrific. So if everybody in this meeting is, say we're discussing a really horrific file, if everybody's being stoic and I feel like crying, I should just cry.
Yeah.
To not conform to, and they're speaking a lot of it being around emotions, not conforming to how we're supposed to act. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have manners. It doesn't mean you go tell your boss to F off. That's not what they're saying. Be living more authentically in your emotional body and allowing that to happen, and not having this like stoic
Stoic. Yeah.
face, stoic
Yeah.
presentation. I'm sure this is a message for me.
I wonder if that comes under the, I don't know if I spoke about last week as well. I'll have to listen to last week so I know what I said, because a lot of this, when it comes in and I repeat it, I don't remember it. But they talked about masking our emotions.
Yes, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like everyone looks happy and you're looking around and go, oh, everyone's happy about this, and so I'll be happy about this, but I'm really feeling uncomfortable. And then you go, actually, I feel uncomfortable. And then 4 or 5 other people go, do you know what? I feel really uncomfortable about this too. It's that releasing of but we're all thinking, okay, that we can't show
everybody
that
else
deflection.
seems to have it. Everybody else seems to have it together. So I need to look like I have it together.
Yeah.
I had this one girlfriend.
Conformity for sure.
Yeah. That's exactly what they're talking about. So it's not this big like fight against the machine for non-conformity. That's not what they're asking. They're asking you to realign and be very authentic with where you're at. And I had this, it just reminded me of this girlfriend that I had when Zach was a baby, and her and I would get together and our kids would play. And she was one of the only people that was like really authentic. And I can't stand people that aren't authentic. You can just see it. And I'm like, I don't know. I very much value authenticity. And we would sit back and she'd be like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fucking exhausted. She's like, me too. And he wouldn't sleep and he did this. And she's like, I don't have a clue what to do. I don't have a clue what to do. I don't know what to do with him. And I'm like, oh my God. And then this happened. Like, nobody tells you these things. I'm like, we're talking about childbirth and oh my God, this is happening. And she's like, oh my God, thank God you said that. She goes, everybody makes this look so easy. This isn't easy. So we would have these wonderful, like authentic conversations about the reality of being new mothers. And that is what they're saying for to not conform.
Yeah.
So don't conform and be like, I'm great. Everything's good. Little Johnny slept last night. Yay.
Yeah. We, about a year ago, I started getting things that I needed to do more energy circles. And that's like people getting together on a topic. And one of the things you find with an energy circle is you have 4 or 5 people, up to 6, even bigger. But most of these in-person ones are about 6 people. And when someone starts talking on a topic, they sort of start a bit, oh, I don't know if I want to say too much here. But then as they start to unfold, everyone sort of almost takes a deep breath and goes, oh, me too, me too. I've never told anyone this. I've never told anyone this. So it's a way to communicate those sort of feelings in an enclosed group, where you will start to realize that judgment, you're not ruining your whole life by this. You're just doing it in a smaller circle and putting your toe in the water. And you'll find from these circles that the more you actually say that what you think, the more other people will agree with you. And so anyone who's kind of thinking, how can I put my toe in the water in this? How can I start to actually say how I really feel? To people, start an energy circle. Sometimes they're good to start with people you don't know. Like if you've got social, we have sort of heads up in our area Facebook pages, and you can go on there and say, would anyone like to join a walking group? And people will just jump on, and it usually ends up being strangers. And that becomes a group that you can walk with once a week. If you're working, it might be a 6 o'clock walk in the evening on a Wednesday, and you get together and you start to talk about these topics each week. And you'll find that it's a really good way for yourself to open up and to have these conversations that you would have had with, in a small mothers group or in a thing, that you get to an age where you don't have those anymore. Your kids actually bring you into things. And if you don't have kids, or your kids have left home, it's hard to say, where do I get this other than my workplace? Where do I get to do this? So that's kind of more growing popular way of doing it in our area. We don't do walking groups. We just sit and have a fruit platter and bring a topic in each time. And the ones we do tend to have an intuitive or a psychic sort of element to them as well. We practice our intuitive, we do a meditation. If someone has a way of doing a different meditation, we might go for a walk together to meditate, you know, but most of it's discussion and most of it's talking about different ways we're doing it and trusting in your knowing and trusting in those things. So energy circles work in different ways, but I highly recommend, if anyone is looking to do that, jump on a Facebook site or a notice site, or even if you are a mother and your kids are at school, jump on in the newsletter and see if you can see if there's other people that want to do it, because that will help your personal healing and it will help their healing. And it goes exactly back to what Tania said about being in that bed and warming. One of the big topics throughout each thing, when they talked about diet, mind and body, was that exchange of energy. And they were talking about balancing each other off. So you will give to that person, and by giving to that person, you're actually taking as well. You're getting your own healing. So you sort of, any exchange of energy is cyclical. And if you can get both of them giving positive energy, so both intentions of being kind and love and joy, then that's where we need to be. And sometimes, as you mentioned, you'll get like the person who comes and gets the warmth and runs away and, you know, does that 8 or 9 times. So that's where you'll get a negative energy. You walk away feeling a bit crappy and not as good. I mean, you've got to steer away from that as much as you can, but in most cases, you will find that the other person also needs the healing. So they will do the same sort of exchange and get you on that line. The other thing I wanted to go back to was your comment on the diet, because they talk about seasonal food and seasonal eating. And one of the ones that I'm familiar with myself is honey. If you eat the honey from your area, you're less likely, or it works better on allergies in your area. Yeah, and if you eat honey for us, I'm in you know, another state in Australia, that honey is not going to have the same benefits unless the flora and fauna is actually similar. So the bees are using
and they're saying that's the same thing with like local fruits and things like that.
Absolutely. So it's eating that thing. One of the things that they brought up in the download, which was flooding back in as you were talking on that, which we need to be mindful of. And the reason that we're going to struggle to get back to where we were with seasonal eating is that before we had so much travel that we have now, so people were born and lived genetically in their own countries, and the travel was a lot less geographic. Our systems actually worked for a certain diet, and as we start to interbreed and move across in a holistic way as humans, and we can travel so much, then our diets and our bodies don't align as much as what it is. So we need to start thinking also about the intuitive side. So I mean, we've got opposite seasons at the moment, but I went over into your country for a month, and then I'm eating for food that's available in your country, and it's saying that the crossover of that is that I should also be eating seasonal for back in my country, but I also need to realize that the weather's different where you are, and I need to be eating the food in yours for the allergies in yours. So there is a crossover that's a lot harder for us than it was 100 years ago. And so our correction back into there is not as black and white, not as, you know, you eat this, you eat this, you eat this. Yeah. And so our intuition becomes even stronger, because if you and I are sitting there and I'm going, I really feel like turmeric, and you're like, I really feel like honey, there's a good reason why we're doing that. It's like because your body's still adjusting to this because you've moved over here, or you're, you know, those sort of things that you need. And even within, you know, my household now, I'm trying to cook not necessarily what I feel like, but what the boys feel like. And so like, I'm not a mushroom fan and they are, and my son just kept saying, can we bring home mushrooms? And I know that he's really good with that sort of intuitiveness. So now, so now I'll make a pasta and I'll do a mushroom pasta for them and I'll do another pasta for myself. And so I'm starting to go, okay, we shouldn't just blanket feed the family. If I can add an ingredient and make it pretty easy, then I will. Or he's a good cook too. So if he's making it, he can, not put as many mushrooms in mine, that sort of stuff. So it is harder in a household to actually get the needs of everyone.
I get that. Of course it is. But they
Yeah.
spoke specifically about, and I like your phrase of seasonal eating, that it helps with inflammation in the body.
Yeah. And that's a big issue across the world. Like,
yes.
The other thing that I don't know how much time we've got left, but was really interesting, and I don't think I spoke about it last week, but they were talking about.
I need to interrupt.
Yeah.
They said there's one more topic that we want to make sure that she brings up, and they wanted me to say it to you. And then you started talking. So they said there's one more topic that you're going to bring up that's important, and another one that you're going to mention that's going to be talked about in the next one. And maybe that's so that I can prepare.
Okay. Very good. Well, this one is about that this is a Western women in particular are the core of where the realignment is coming, because Western women, unfortunately, have gone the furthest away. So we were one of the most intuitive people.
You did talk about that in the last.
Yeah. Okay. And so they want to reiterate that we should be looking at our Indigenous cultures and looking at other Indigenous cultures. I did, because I mentioned Mexico and those areas. And they want to say that actually works with the feeding roles as well. And who buys the groceries and all those sort of things. So they're bringing that Western thing back to our diet. The Western diet is the furthest away from our seasonal and our Indigenous cultural eating as we can. So if you fall into that bucket, start to look around at what other people are eating in your area that may not, or people who are intuitive eaters start to reflect and go, what are you eating? What are you feeling like? What are you doing? And even getting restaurants to look, that there's restaurants that do seasonal eating, start to look at that and start to compliment them on their seasonal eating so that we can encourage that to happen as a whole. I mean, some people do it because it's cheaper. It is a cheaper way to eat.
Well, and it would just be natural to, I mean, you're really going against the grain if you're, and I mean, I don't seasonally eat. I'm not claiming that I understand all of this. I'm learning right along with everybody else. But it makes sense that we would naturally be able to digest well the foods that are growing in the area in which we're living at that time. Like, that just makes sense for us to be connected to the earth in that way.
Unfortunately, we don't. And that's what they're saying. In particular, Western cultures and the way our supermarkets work is we have a label on the supermarket and we want that label filled for the whole time. We want to be able to get that, our fruit and veg are probably the ones where they do have change, but we still want beans all year. We still want corn all year. We still want things all year. And if we don't get it, we're getting it in a can or in another form, because we have tacos every Tuesday and we have, And so, we have a long way to correct back to seasonal eating. They're sort of saying, from a Western culture point of view, you are a long way off. So don't expect to wake up tomorrow and go, okay, we're seasonally eating, that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm honestly, I'm sitting here going, I don't even know what I would seasonally eat right now. Like, it's rainy and miserable.
So you'd be vegetables, you'd be broccoli, cauliflower. In Australia anyway, you would be potatoes. More into that root vegetable.
They were showing me radishes.
So the ones that are less reliant on sun. It's logical, right? It's like your ground vegetables that have nutrients and water.
I'm gonna Google this and look into it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what your seasonal vegetables are now and what mine are. And you can see that in the fruit. I mean, I'm lucky enough, I live in a place where they grow a lot of vegetables. We have local, bananas and mangoes are huge at the moment. Passion fruit, like although passion fruit has already been going for a while, but our mangoes are literally ripening on our tree now, and then we'll end up with thousands of them.
Wow.
And so it's putting that into your diet, but they're not expecting in July for us to have mangoes, but we do. We're like, oh yeah, buy the frozen mango, put it in our smoothie because we love mango smoothies. And they're saying, no, that's when you start to look at your green smoothies and your herbal smoothies rather than your fruit smoothies. And you've got to be able to change it. And then you level your bodies of sugars and everything that you're meant to do. You're meant to put on a little bit of weight at the start of winter. It's your warmth, and then you're meant to lose it when it comes into summer. That's just how we
put
used
it
to
on,
go.
but I don't lose it.
Unpack,
so
so
what's the next topic to be discussed?
The next topic,
episode,
which is flashing in my mind, is mind. So they talked about 3 things in a row, and they've made me write them in the document in a row. So the first one was diet, which we've really touched on today. Of course, you've picked the one in the right order. And the next one was really about the mind. And I've got the heading on my page, and I've got, the core notes written there, but I've got to actually detail all of that download as well. So that will be interesting. But it talks very much about anxiety and about loneliness. So we touched on loneliness today. But it talks about, in a lot of details, they were talking about anxiety and why that has become such a virus throughout our nation, and that the wonderful news is that we're really going to move away from that, and we're going to start dealing with our, things like people now, it's not uncommon for nearly everyone to say they've had a panic attack, and that was not something that should be normally in our routine. So, and part of the little tactics of talking and touch and things like that will actually help us move out of that. And I think you mentioned last week that when we were talking a little bit about anxiety or panic attacks, one of the things that can help you get out of that is to verbalize it. To say, I'm feeling like this now, blah, 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 blah. And so you're already doing some of the things what they're saying that society is going to start doing. And so it'll be interesting. This one fascinates me a lot because I worry about it. I worry about mental health in such a big way. And part of what they are talking about is mental health in the ones they talk about this in a big way. Okay. And this is part of the reason why they did this download, is mental health can actually come from too much intuition. And so just as much as it can come from too much physical. So it's both-sided. We can get to the point where we want to escape our body all the time and live in our intuitive mind. We want to see fairies and aliens and all these other things because they're escapism from the world. And so a lot of
that's what I call spiritual bypassing.
Exactly. So spiritual bypassing, all those sort of things is what we're going to have a chat about next week. And they do have some really good stuff. So little sort of tidbits of the way we should be moving, so that hopefully you can listen to it and you can adapt it to your own life and say, how can I do it? I mean, if our homework for everyone is to go and find 5 things that are seasonally grown in our area at the moment and see if we can add them to our diet.
Eating them.
Yeah. Or are we already intuitively doing it? Like,
I know I'm not. I've been on a blue cheese kick lately, so I don't know if that grows in my area or not, but
I made a tomato and blue cheese pizza the other day, and it was
I love blue
cheese. It was amazing. So
in fact, I'm going to the grocery store after this, so I'm going to check out what my seasonal vegetables are.
Oh yeah, one other little thing they said on diet, which was really interesting, and I wrote about it yesterday when I was doing my write-up, was that they were saying people are going to get worried that this means that you have to everyone's got to become a vegan.
No,
that's not what they're saying at all. And they're saying not that some people will feel that that's where they need to go. That is fine. That's an issue. But they said meat will become more a celebratory food. So something that we do on occasions and celebration, and less an every night meal. It might be like a Sunday that you have a roast, or you know, you might have steaks on Tuesday or something like that, but it won't become something that we do in our diets all the time. And part of the seasonal eating, it means that we're bringing all these other vegetables and things, and we'll start to realize that meat isn't a meat and 3 veggie dinner. It's like, what are we having for dinner? And meat is an option. So that twist of thinking will actually is already there.
Personally, actually tried to cut meat out, and I find my body needs that protein. And there's going to be people that are going to say you get more protein from these different vegetables, blah blah blah. It just doesn't.
No, and that was the talk that they were saying, where people have come from all different countries of origin. There is countries of origin where meat is crucial for the diet, and there's countries of origin where it's not. And because we've cross-blended, we've got now you can't look at that as being where you should be. And then there's individual body issues as well, they're saying. But so you have to find out. That's part of listening to your physical and to your intuitive, what it is for you. And once again, one of the sayings that they said is, we've got to stop looking out windows and start looking into mirrors, because we're not saying, oh, what is Tania eating? Because then I have to judge myself against that. They're saying, look at you, look at your mind, your body. What is that saying you should eat? And then eat that. And Tanya's on the other side of the mirror eating what she's eating, because that's what her body needs. And then
exactly.
The biggest thing we need to do to shift is exactly where we started at the very part of this talk, is the non-conforming that you spoke about. It's let's stop thinking that we all have to be the same, because that would be a very, very boring world.
Yeah. As one last thing, Spirit was just saying that in this time of awakening and
realignment.
There was another realignment. Yeah, it is a lot of, like, I'll certainly see people be like, oh my God, there's such an environmental problem. I need to tackle it at the government level, or I need to tackle it here. I need to tackle consumerism and at this high level. And they're saying no. And I've been actually personally saying this for a long time. It's about each individual person realigning, because then they are going to intuitively make these changes within their own home. The change does not happen big. It happens small, with everybody doing it in alignment with themselves. This isn't about attacking, nor there's using the word attacking, but I'm not.
It's a side issue. That whole political and that whole is a side issue to this. It's like, if you want to go political, if you want to do things, that's fine.
Where you go to create awakening, you go within.
Yeah, and it's the mirror again. It's not looking out the window. It's very much saying,
I love that.
What am I? What am I doing personally? And do you know how much we lead by example? Like, just a generational change, because one of the things when we talked about the age groups, they talk about the generational change, and that we're not passing down things. So just by, as a mother or a father or an auntie or an uncle or a sister or a friend, you are influencing that other person anyway by them watching, what are you doing? I'm eating seasonally. Why are you eating seasonally? Because it makes me feel better, because it helps with my allergies, it helps with these things. Okay. You know, and them actually then starting to process that through the brain and going, oh, I wonder whether I can do that. Not looking at it going, I've got to follow what you're doing, just saying, how does that resonate for me? And then look in your own mirror and say, hey, can I be doing that? And if I can, will that benefit me? No, it won't. Yes, it will. That sort of stuff. So
perfect.
Yeah.
We are very much at time. Apparently in series 2, our podcasts are much longer. So it was lovely chatting with you, Nette. As always, we're on the same page. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you have any questions or any particular content, something that you want sort of expanded on, reach out to one of us. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.